What if creating the life you truly wanted meant stepping away from the one you've always known? Well, today's guest is a mom who asked herself that very question. Not only did she ask herself that question, she acted on it. She wanted more presence and connection with her family. She made the decision to relocate outside of the United States and redesign what her daily life was. In this episode, she shares what the transition really looked like, the mindset, the practical steps, and the unexpected lessons along the way. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, there has to be another way to live, this episode is a reminder that change isn't reserved for someone else. It starts with you making a decision and acting on it. Hey there, I'm Jenny Perez. I'm a wife, mom, and small business owner. And although I love being all of those things, I'm at the point where I feel like there's something more to life outside of those roles. Does that sound like you? If you're in search of that extra magic, craving a dose of positivity, purpose, and real talk on being worthy, capable, and able, you're in the right place. Let's kick off this journey together, ignite that spark, radiate some positivity, and discover what makes your life and business truly shine. Ready to jump in? Let's spark some radiance together. All right, well, Mackenzie, welcome to Sparking Radiance. I want to start by saying that I have been so excited for this interview. I really genuinely have, because it's something that I am so curious about. Let me share with the audience really quickly how we kind of interacted. And as some of my listeners know, that my husband and I and the kids, we typically will go down to Mexico, have an extended stay. And this last time we were there for a significant amount of time, maybe the whole summer. And something happened where my algorithm knew I was there and picked up. And it started in my feed. I started to see, Americans that were making their homes in Mexico. And then when I came back from vacation, kind of post-vacation, you start questioning all your life choices. And one of the things that came up was your Instagram page. And I remember this was about 3 months ago? Yeah. I remember sending you a message and saying, I like your stuff. I'm curious. My husband has been poking at me, like, would I even consider relocating? And since then, I am excited to share that I've seen you grow in these last few months. You have amazing content. And just to give our audience a little bit background, can you tell us a little bit about you and your story?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. I am a wife and mother, 2 little kids, 2 and about to be 5 are their ages. I was a nurse. I am a nurse. I'll always be a nurse. I was a nurse for the last 10 years. Doing everything from cardiac to critical care. So I thrive on, adrenaline and sprinting between patients. And then a few years ago, we kind of just got this quiet itch, I think, to do something different. And we'd always talked about Mexico. My husband's Mexican. My kids are Mexican too now through dual citizenship. And then I'm Mexican American. So it's in my blood. It's in my roots. I've always been very connected to the Mexican culture. And so about maybe a year and a half ago, we started taking it seriously, making real moves to start the process, like legally with the visas and the citizenships. And then I kind of had to figure out, what are we going to do to keep us afloat? And I got into remote work through drop shipping. And so that's kind of our story. And once we secured, a remote job, all of the legal paperwork, and kind of decided what to do with our cars, house, decided to finally tell our family, I think just a few months before we left, we just decided to leap in hopes that the net would appear. And it definitely did. It was one of those things that almost felt like a blind leap of faith, because we had no idea what we're doing. We had no idea the time frame, how long we're going to be in Mexico and what our future holds. And so we really just made a very concrete, rough, vague plan and promised to stick out for at least a few months. And so now, we're 3.5 months here in Mexico. And like you said, I decided to kind of document my journey. I started posting content just a few months ago. And I think a lot of people resonate with it. like I said, just wanting something different or wanting a great adventure for yourself or your kids. And I think I've also done a lot of soul searching as a woman and just an individual. And because as a mother and a wife, you get very wrapped into those labels that you kind of forget to keep dating yourself, keep exploring yourself. And so that's something that I think that really awoken in myself was a fire to celebrate myself or empower other women, empower myself. And I definitely did that with moving and exploring here and then just entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And I like that you showed that it was a process. Like it wasn't just like, how long did it take you to plan to get, first of all, the voice? What was the voice telling you when it was whispering to you and your husband?
Yeah, I've never really reflected on that. That's a great question. It started as, a really small itch, like this can't be it. Not, and I have an amazing life at home. I have an amazing family, an amazing village. I loved my job. But there was just that quiet itch. Once that bug was put into our ear, like we could move if we wanted to. Every day, I'd come home from work at 6 p.m. after being gone since, 6 a.m. and only getting my kids for 2 hours before they slept. And so then when I put them down, you have this immense guilt, like I didn't spend enough time with them. I reacted to, all of these things. Once you finally sit down, your brain shuts off. And night after night, I think that itch grew and it started telling me to be more present. And then it started telling me to slow down, but my life wasn't really in the position for me to be present or to slow down, and or I didn't know how to. And so that's what I was chasing, is kind of stillness and trying to learn to be more present. And so I think I just chased that feeling. The itch was just saying, just keep going, keep chasing this avenue. And that's what I did.
Was it you that presented it to your husband, or did your husband present it to you? Like, how did that conversation happen?
You want to know, that's actually a great question, because my husband was the catalyst. I absolutely said I would never consider it,
Okay.
Because like I said, our life was perfect. We own our home, we own our cars, we don't have much debt. And so, stability wise, we felt like, why would we rock this boat? And, our village being there, my in-laws, my mom, watch my kids at the drop of a hat. And so it was kind of hard to even imagine leaving that scenario. And then, like I said, once he planted the seed, that itch, it was just something I couldn't scratch. I had to really discover. And but once I think I was very closed-minded when he presented it, the opportunity to move or planted that seed. And then once I started reflecting and we started actually really discussing it, it became something that I was really passionate about. It became a real topic or a possibility for me. I guess I never would have considered moving out of the state, let alone out of the country, because I would never want to leave my family. And so, no, he definitely presented it. And then I think once we got closer to the move date, he had a little bit of cold feet or reservations. Like, we don't have to do this. We don't have to move. I was like, oh, no. I
committed. Yeah.
I couldn't stop talking about it. Couldn't stop, the process. I was so excited. And so basically, we moved this August of 2025. We talked about it for a good solid year, tried to plan, remote opportunity, make sure that was up and running. And then once January hit, we did a big trip to visit the Yucatan Peninsula, see where we wanted to truly live. And we took a month trip then. And from there, it just snowballed. We were, 10 toes down, moving to Mexico. So, yeah.
So about 8 months of planning and consolidating and.
Yeah. I would say eight months of active planning.
One of the things I picked up on some of your content was, this stood out to me. We sold everything. We sold our lives and we packed it into 8 suitcases. Yeah. 8 suitcases for 4 people. So that's about 2 each. Tell me more about that. What was that like?
Yeah. And when I say sell everything, still have our home, those big items. But as far as, your Christmas decorations go, or all of your kitchen supplies, they were in the garage sale. Everything, we really tried to get it down to bare bones. We really did sell almost everything, nearly brand new bikes. And like I said, all of our kitchen utensils, pots and pans, everything to, organization cabinets. And And like I said, we just wanted to get it down to bare bones. We don't know what the future holds, when we're coming back to the US or if we do. And so we kind of just didn't want to leave anything behind. And we didn't want to drive because the drive was too long. So we kind of just settled on everything into everybody gets 2 suitcases and that's it.
I love that. I love that. And another thing I picked up as well is that you spend less in Mexico, but you're richer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I definitely came from a household. We didn't have a lot in terms of money. And I think my parents always instilled that in me that, being rich doesn't actually come from having money. And so I've always had that mentality, like, I could have nothing. I could go broke tomorrow and probably be just as happy. Here it feels like I'm spending less and my income could be less or the same, because now we're just on one income. But I feel richer in terms of, I feel richer because I have more time than I did back in the States. And so I think when I say I feel richer, it's because I get to be the person I want to be here in Mexico because of probably the remote opportunities and the culture, but I get to be a more present mother. I get to be a better friend, to the women around me because I have a lot less burnout and mental fatigue from the day. So I have time for myself at the end of the day. I make room for my hobbies. And then I also get to explore new things. I get to adventure all day, learn about myself, learn about the culture, learn about others. And so I think it boils down to I'm rich in time and family and happiness and health because I do feel happier, healthier, and just more well-rounded here.
Yeah, and rich in presence for sure. Because that's one of the things I also picked up from your content was, I think there was a post or a video that you had where you had put on there, in reflecting, which I appreciate about you is that you give us updates of every month. Like we're 1 month in and this is what I've learned. We're 2 months in and this is what I've learned. And I don't know if it was about like at the 2-month mark where you reflected back on, you realized that you thought that you thrived in a fast-paced environment, but you realized you actually know you thrive in a slow-paced environment. You don't need as much as what you thought you needed, right? Like to consolidate everything down to 8 suitcases. Yep. And then you parent differently because you're not in a constant stress state. That was the other thing I picked up. You parent differently because you have the ability to be more present. But what struck me as well was peace is greater than productivity.
Yeah.
So meaning that sometimes here, I think our culture here in the States is we have to be productive. We always have to be doing something. We always have to be accomplishing something. We have to achieve the next goal, the next medal, the next salary, the next income. But in your eyes and learning from the Mexican culture is that there's actually more peace is greater than productivity.
Yeah. And I could speak to that all day. I think, how you said the hustle and bustle culture of the US, no matter if you're trying to not, or if you're not trying to feed into that or not, you do kind of adopt a rush culture, a rush lifestyle, and what sometimes I call the rat race. You're going to work, going home, starting over. And it feels rushed. It feels forced sometimes. And I think we stretch ourselves a little too thin. And to me, it feels more of a societal issue. Because sometimes people will, in a rebuttal, they'll say, well, you could have done all this in the US. Like I do agree. I think I could have slowed down, been more present, been a better mom in the US. And so it might have, whether it was, perfect timing or coincidental, and all this changed, I'm not sure. But I will say I did thrive. I thought I thrived. And like I said, like I explained to you situations when I was a nurse, I loved, I was a critical care nurse. So I'm going from crashing patient to crashing patient. And I absolutely loved it. I loved my job and I loved the high intensity work I did. And I truly thought I thrived because of my position. And I did get purpose out of being a nurse. And it really wasn't until I completely stopped everything I was doing from, work, after work activities with the kids and forcing in date nights every once in a while. Once all that actually stopped and I felt stillness, did I start listening to my body. And once I slowed down my lifestyle, everything else kind of fell into place. I realized I even rush, doing my makeup or going to the restroom or eating things that you would never consider something that you should rush or would rush. You do, because you're always in that state of, I don't know, stress, constant stress. And so I definitely feel more at peace. And now I can appreciate peace over productivity. Like you said, I'm a firstborn daughter into a Mexican American family, and I think that holds a lot of weight. A lot of pressures is sometimes put on us, and we tend to be maybe type A or go-getters, goal-oriented. And I thought, that with accolades and then titles came pride, from outward sources or your own self. And now I realize, looking back and reflecting, I'm much more proud of myself for being a present mother, actually knowing who I am, or, trying new activities, learning new hobbies, than I ever felt, graduating from graduate school or any title that I could have ever held. So I'm much more proud of myself now, and no matter what anybody else thinks, I've learned to like me.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, when I started following you, you were probably in the couple hundred realm, right? And in the past 3 months, which is why I was like, I know there is an audience, and I know that there's a continuing growth of people that are genuinely curious and that are dreaming of the opportunity of, could I do it? Could I just leave everything that I know that I've come to love and fall in love with another place, another culture. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Mexico. Like you see it, people moving to the Philippines, to Belize, Costa Rica, South America, Europe, people are yearning for a different culture. But I know from seeing and honestly, you have great content. I will say, I love your content because it gives a true perspective of the realizations of what happens when you move into another country, right? We go in with our expectations, and it's something as simple as walking on a street, things we take for granted here in the US, walking on a sidewalk that the concrete is level, whereas in Mexico, you may or may not have that. You may be walking up steps in and out. You do have to pay attention as you're walking. But I genuinely feel that there is a growing group of people that are curious and dreaming of, what if I took the leap? With not only, and maybe if they have children or don't, but like even just looking for a different perspective for their family. I will say that, and if you have anything to share about about that, but I will say that one of the things that just keeps, as I was going through your content, that keeps repeating in my head is when you said, I chose a life where my kids get the best of me, not what's left of me. And I was like, that stung. That stung for me as a mother. That stung because I think, like you say, you would work, 10 to 12 hours a day, and they get 2 hours of you. Is that fair?
No. And it is. I empathize with you because I know that feeling. And even now it still happens. You always have mom guilt no matter what you're doing. So my life's not perfect. Not a perfect parent. I don't have perfect days. I still lose out on moments with my kids. Even if I spend all day with them, I'll look back, when your brain settles at 8 p.m. when your kids are in bed and you're thinking, God, I missed that moment for connection, or, whatever it may be. And of course, I still have those moments, but I will say it's a complete 180 now as to how I parent. And it's more intentional. I think parenting here has reminded me that kids don't need constant entertainment, and to let them live with me. And I don't know if that makes sense. That's how I say it all the time, but I try to let them live with me. Meaning if I'm washing the dishes, my daughter pulls up a chair, we don't have to speak. She just starts doing it with me. And I don't contest or anything. I just let her live with me. I'm in the bathroom doing my makeup and she wants to do it too. I just push it over. She can learn from me. But before, I think I had such little time to myself that anytime I had, 5 minutes pocket a day to do my makeup or to sit alone by myself. And then my child would interrupt that, or I'd feel like it was an interruption. I think I'd react. And so now even I have a larger time for myself, allotted for myself to just spend by myself or to explore new hobbies or to work, that now all of my free time is kind of devoted to my kids. The second they get out of school, we have all afternoon, all night to do family things. And so before, my life wasn't like that. And so I don't know, all in all, I think I'm just I parent with more intuition now and less pressure or comparison. And so I think it's more about, I gave myself permission to be a more present mom and more intentional mom.
I love that. I will say too, for some of our listeners who don't know, because my family and I have gotten to experience this, but Mexico truly comes alive at night.
It does.
I mean, here in the US, it shuts down 7, 8 o'clock. It's done. In Mexico, that is typically when you will find the coffee shops are full of people engaging. Or actually, I'll share with the listeners. There was this road that we would take back to our place that we were staying, and it was like a joke because we would usually, coming from the beach or what have you, we would drive down and we would say, "Oh, the coffee shop is happening tonight," because every time, and this is like 8, 9 o'clock. I mean, it was full. It was full of people just sitting around, conversating, kids playing. I will say that Mexico is very, very family friendly. It's very common to see, at least the parts of Mexico that I've been to, it's very common to be sitting in a restaurant, enjoying a dinner, and there's a playground right next door.
Yeah. I'd agree. Even if it's not a playground, it might be an open space like a sidewalk or, kind of a grassy pad that nobody's bothered if my kids are playing around, their table while they're eating. Or I have had on multiple occasions, and sounds so funny, people offer their food to my kids. And what I say by that is if my kids, are teetering around and then talking to strangers, kind of waving or like putting their hand on a stranger. My kids are very like gregarious and outgoing. And so they'll just go up to strangers, get very comfy. They'll put their arm on their chair. And I've had, other probably parents or other people be like, "Can I get them a bite of this?" I'm like, "Go for it." They're very accepting of children. And yeah, I think they do things with kids in mind. In the US, you have kids places. You're kind of shunned to kids areas until for kids are teens. And so to see a child out in the wild, throwing a fit or making a mess is an inconvenience, a nuisance. And then here, I think it's kind of funny, or it's accepted, or strangers will come help me. If I'm walking on the sidewalk with my kids, more often than not, people will get off the entire sidewalk. They don't, make me pigeonhole myself through a narrow walking space. They're very courteous and accepting of children.
Yeah, yeah. What are some things? What are some pros and some cons that you've experienced? Because there are. I mean, obviously, you're in a completely different country, completely different culture. And I know we've highlighted a lot of the things that you've enjoyed, but what are other things? Like if people are genuinely considering, what do they have to keep in mind when you make that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the pros list is endless. I mean, I'll speak to it a little bit. Just the culture here, the friendliness. You don't get it. It's not the same back home. Even just from a good morning on the street, Mexicans greet each other more fully. It's not like a, "Hey, bye, how you doing?" While you're looking down, that would be considered rude. And, they look you in your eye. "Good morning. How are you? I saw you yesterday." Or they love to connect. And so that's what I love about here. They're very welcoming. What I like about where I'm at, I know it's not the same for everywhere, but it's a walkable city. And so everything's centered around like a plaza or, a bunch of, well, I'm really downtown. So, I mean, it's a walkable area of the town, and the food, you can't get past that. There really are just so many pros, but that's what blows me away sometimes is the friendliness, the walkability, which was a huge plus for me, is to not be in the car for hours a day and, rushing, across the city in a car. Everything I need is just right here. And I kind of like life simple like that. And then as far as cons can go is my biggest one I can speak to just today. I was at the immigration office. This is why I tell everybody, do everything at home before you come, just to change my address. And just the bureaucratic steps that, processes to even get a checking account opened, to get your driver's license, to get health insurance down here when you're a citizen, or like even immigration processes at the immigration office, they're not streamlined. It's not linear. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense. They'll throw like extra steps in there, or and it doesn't always make sense. And so that can be very frustrating when you're from where we're from in the States. Is there's usually a process and there's a procedure and they follow it, and then they'll tell you in the protocol where you miss, so, but here it's not like that. It's not like that at all. And so that can be frustrating. And, cons, I have not experienced this, but though the safety presence, it is a little unsettling. There's a larger safety presence here, meaning you'll see Army here out sometimes. I get the Marines or the Marina people, and then just state police. It's just different here than it is in the States. So, police will drive all the time with the lights on. You're not used to seeing that unless there's a problem, if the police are chasing someone or they're responding to a call. The sounds are different. The security officers holding, large guns. You're not used to seeing that. So everywhere you turn, it's just a different presence of security. And that can be a little unsettling. But those are probably my two biggest cons. I've always felt very safe. And I think that comes from, I think when you accept the culture, love the culture, I think it becomes a little less scary, and if you learn the language, the language around you doesn't feel so foreign. And I think that helps immediately to feel safer. If I were to come here, not know the language, not really understand some nuances of culture life, then I think I'd be more scared just not knowing what's going on around me. But I've always felt very safe in Mexico and around Mexicans. So I can't speak to that much.
I think from my experience, I think learning, obviously, pretty similar as far as driving, walking, just maybe some of the colors might be a little bit different, understanding like, what does white mean? What does, what does this mean? I will share a story. I actually, just to kind of give a perspective of how some things could be different in Mexico. When, the first time we went, I guess that it was a one-way street. I didn't know. I was driving. I parked the car. And so we get back to the car after having dinner, and I got a parking ticket because it was a one-way and I was the wrong way. And I didn't know it because there was no other car, right? Until I got back when I saw, oh yeah, my car is the wrong way. But just to kind of share with my audience. So I look at the parking ticket, and it is actually written on a piece of paper. And it is handwritten, the parking ticket. And it's not just like a tick, like saying, it was like a full-on paragraph. Like it described the street that I was on, the vehicle color, the time of day. Like it was a paragraph. And I remember thinking to myself, which to put things into perspective, was like, who has time to write this whole thing? And we actually have, it's a joke of our families, but I have a picture of my ticket that I'm the criminal that I parked the wrong way. But that even to go as to, okay, well, what happens when you get a ticket there? Like, then they have these different things where like, if you go and pay it cash within a certain amount, then you'll get a discount and you have to go to this certain office. And so it is just understanding how things operate, differently there.
You do have to kind of just appreciate that you'll run into situations like that. It's inevitable because you didn't grow up here. It's going to be different. There are going to be certain situations that you won't understand, or like simple things of how to go about, paying my parking ticket. And so, there are little things that come up every once in a while that I'm like, oh God, I wish I would have known that. Or why is it like that? And you kind of just have to roll with the punches, laugh at yourself and move on. Cause that happens, like little things will happen to me all the time where I'm just like, it's just another culture shock. Like now I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, I think the video where you got a haircut, where you documented your haircut. Can you share a little about what happened there?
I'm embarrassing myself for public consumption, but no, well, I'll talk to kind of both ends of it. I'm documenting my journey of improving my Spanish. And so I'm a no sabo. And so my parents, my grandparents did not speak Spanish to me growing up in efforts to kind of assimilate with the culture. And so now I'm learning Spanish as an adult, and it's kind of, I run into some challenges, but now that I'm here and I'm, full immersion. I can only speak Spanish. I do my best to kind of put myself in situations where I'll have to learn, or I'll have to learn new words, or I'll have to speak to people with different accents, which is the hardest for me. And so like that, I went into a hair salon and I got a haircut. And there's just certain, innuendos or nuances of language that I might not even understand. I asked for, maybe a trim. And I explained to her, I wanted face framing layers. I Googled all the words I need to know before I walked in there. And so something kind of got lost in translation where my bangs, or my face framing bangs were cut the exact same length of my entire hair. My hair was all kind of chopped off a few inches, which I guess actually did me good because my hair was dead anyway. But it was just kind of a reminder that things happen. I kind of just had to roll with that punch, and I learned a lot, even just from that singular video. And I'm posting content alone. And just from that single video, people will tell me what I said wrong, which I love. I love constructive feedback. They'll tell me, something in the video that I didn't even notice, or what the hairstylist was trying to tell me, or what I should do next time. And so not even am I learning Spanish in real time here in Mexico. I'm learning it from, people commenting on my videos, which I absolutely love. I learn a lot, actually. I post, misinformation at times. I posted a singular video about, tipping etiquette here in Mexico, just kind of little things you might not know from, as an American moving to Mexico. And I guess I got it wrong. Everybody told me. Everybody wanted, love to leave me a comment about it. And then I ate my words, so you learn. So there were some things that I guess I assumed you tipped for and you don't. So not even just that.
Was this the at the grocery stores?
No, actually, this is the guy holding the door at the OXXOs, or the gas stations. And they're at almost all my gas stations here where I'm at. And so I think I assumed as a whole, all of Mexico is, or a lot, people take that from my content sometimes. I live in this one little speck of land on the earth, and they think I'm generalizing. And so maybe I speak too general, but I spoke to that you tip these gentlemen, that they're not an employee at, the gas station, but, they like a few pesos. And they're like, absolutely not. Do not tip this gentleman. So there's things that, and that was kind of a resounding answer, or, across the board. And so I learned that way too. You kind of just, I just take it as it comes.
Yeah, I like the one where you had, which we learned this last summer, that the baggers at the grocery stores are typically senior citizens. Yep. And we wondered why, when we first went into, it was a grocery store, Walmart, I don't remember, but they were sitting up, lined up, like they line up and they take turns of, at least the one that we went to, they take turns of who gets to bag.
So I've noticed
like a rotation. And come to find out that they're tipped. So they are not employees. So these are typically senior citizens that are trying to supplement their income. And, you hand them a few pesos. And it was funny because prior to us learning about the tip at Walmart, my husband and I were like, these were the nicest Walmart employees that we have ever come across. Come to find out, well, we didn't realize that they only work for tips.
Yep. That's right.
So... And they are super friendly, super nice.
They are. And that's another reason I kind of like, and, my content is just that it's mine. It's my style. I post just random things that I observe and I think would be worth sharing. And so even things like that, I learned one day, I went probably 2 months without tipping these baggers, because how are you supposed to know truly? Unless someone tells you, unless you learn from the person in front of you. Or, you observe the little coins and you're like, oh, I should add to that pile. You don't know until you know. And so sometimes I post things like that. And I love doing it because other people will be like, oh, I feel so bad I didn't do it. Next time I will. Or, it really just does provide information. And that's all I want to do. And I really do enjoy doing it. I kind of I like to post content, like learning about the social media world. And so, I really enjoy doing it.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. This could go to people that are not even, planning to relocate, but maybe they're going to go on vacation. Maybe they're going to go down to Cancun, to Cabo, to Mexico City, wherever it is. The importance, or the fact that you highlighted that Mexico operates very much on a cash system. It's very, very common. I mean, you had mentioned cash is king here. So you have your pesos ready. Like that little tip in itself is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it is something, like I said, you don't know until you know. And so I like I'm already out and about all day. I'm already, learning things for myself. And so I'm kind of just posting content as I learn, new things here in Mexico.
And I appreciate it. I genuinely am romanticizing the idea. Like, the seed has been planted for me with my husband, and I love your content for that reason, because then I think, wow, that she is highlighting all of the great things, and she is also giving advice as what to prepare for, what to look at, or what the expectation is, right? Because that's the other thing, is the expectation. When you are in another country, you can't have the same level of expectation for certain things, as we talked about before. But to kind of wrap it up, I want you to speak to somebody, because we know that there is an audience. There are people like myself who are genuinely curious and are genuinely thinking, could I make this happen? Someone who is maybe romanticizing the idea of living abroad, where, if it be Mexico or anywhere else outside of the U.S., what words would you give them? What advice would you give? What things should they consider before? What advice in general? What would you say?
Yeah, I think, you said words. I can think 3 words come to mind: fearlessness, willingness, and growth. I think I'd say if the idea is coming to you, listen to it. Don't ignore it. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing. Big changes happen from like small, consistent steps, or at least in my opinion. So that means, researching, exploring, asking questions, imagining what life could look like. That's really how it started for me. When that seed was planted, I did just take tiny baby steps. I started, Googling what if. Little Google searches snowballed into dual citizenship and airplane tickets. And so I don't know. I think once the biggest mindset shift for me was understanding that change doesn't necessarily guarantee comfort, but it almost always guarantees growth. So,
say that again. I love that. Say that again.
Change doesn't automatically guarantee comfort, but it almost always guarantees growth. And that goes for anything. And that also, this is coming from someone that did not like change. And so I also that's a really big caveat, because like I said, loved my life. I loved how it was going. I was super comfortable. I could call it complacency. But also there's nothing wrong with that. And so not until I made a big change and got out of my comfort zone did I feel like I grew again. I was always growing. I was always, doing something, because, we feed off success and accolades and whatnot, and hustle and bustle. But I changed in such a different way, in a way that I can't even quantify or really put words to. And so I think that's just really important. If that voice is inside of you, if that itch, you might as well just scratch it. Just start scratching the surface, and then getting out of your comfort zone. That's where growth occurs. And so you don't have to have everything figured out. You can learn the rest along the way. That's exactly what I'm doing. I say it all the time. I do not know what I'm doing, but I guarantee you I'll figure it out. And so kind of just leap and the net will appear.
What's next for you guys? So I know you planned out the last 8 months. Where do you guys see yourselves in the next few months?
Yeah, we really are building a good community here. Really great friends at my kids' school. They're just finally getting really comfortable with their friends, with the language. I actually didn't even mention there are some. We do have setbacks. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows. My daughter had a really hard time adapting the first month because she doesn't speak Spanish. She understands every word, but she had a really hard time fitting in. And she is the girl. She's the outgoing girl. She makes friends with anybody. She'll go up to anybody and ask them to play with her, but not in Spanish. It's a little different. And so she would get very discouraged. And not until about last week, I heard her run up. I could cry saying it, but I heard her. She ran up to one of her friends at school. We also go to sports with them. And she said to her friend, "Para mi cumpleaños, for my birthday," she said, "Va a ser princesa." She was trying to say the theme is going to be princess for my birthday. But hearing her say that, knowing that she actually does speak Spanish with her friends because I never hear her speak it, really solidified everything for me. I made the right decision. I'm glad I stuck it out. And so what's next for us is kind of just growing more here in Playa, or, here in Playa del Carmen. And, we've kind of set roots down where we love traveling. So we're going to keep doing that the next couple months. I've introduced, kind of drop shipping to my followers, and kind of, they're building their business and they're becoming successful alongside me. And so I'm going to keep doing that because that fuels me so much. That gives me so much purpose every day, is talking with other women and men, just talking with other parents and giving them like almost an out or an excuse to do something different. And so that's what's in store for us. Really just same old here by the beach, and then posting content.
And continue. I love it. I love your content. And for those that are curious about following you, where can they find you?
So it's at McKinzie Corona. It's MAKENZIE Corona with 2 A's at the end. Anywhere. At the end. And Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on all of the socials every day.
Yay. I love it, Mackenzie. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you and I are going to be in contact for sure after the episode. I genuinely do love your content. I genuinely do believe that there are a group of us that are vicariously and romanticizing, one day maybe take that leap of just going against what we've been programmed to believe is what a rich life is. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for your time, and I can't wait to see what happens next for y'all.
Love that. Thank you. And thank you so much for your time and for having me. I've enjoyed it.
You hear that clap? That's me cheering you on for completing another episode. I don't know about you, but man, that was quick. If you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button or share the episode with someone you think that might need a little spark. And help us grow by leaving a review. Remember, keep sparking that radiance from within. Until next time, shine on!